I think it's crazy that we're already talking about Arch Manning being the number one overall pick in the draft. The guy who has to come out the gate smoking would be Kenny Pickett. We didn't anticipate him coming into the league like this. This class didn't have the prototypical guys that you see, like in terms of height, weight, arm talent, all that other stuff. He is kind of like the poster child for what you want your quarterback to look like. He is not coming in as the ballyhooed franchise savior. I just think about the connectivity that Jackson Dart had with his teammates at Ole Miss and the way that that was very appealing to the New York Giants.
Welcome to the NFL on Fox podcast. I am your host, Dave Helman, and all across the league, you are seeing the dust settle from the 2025 NFL draft. The classes are in, the grades have been handed out, people are happy with their hauls, they're upset with their picks, they're upset with people's assessment of their picks. You know how this time of year goes. And more importantly, we're seeing how NFL teams are reacting to the weekend. NFL teams picking up fifth-year options on guys drafted 3 years ago, declining them in some cases. You're seeing teams do things to address their rosters quite literally as we logged on to record the show. The Buffalo Bills signing veteran receiver Elijah Moore. That coming just a couple of days after Bills general manager Brandon Beane took issue with the criticism that the Bills hadn't paid enough attention to receiver in the draft. So, hey, Brandon Beane has earned the benefit of the doubt as far as I'm concerned. But all over the NFL, you can see actions speaking louder than words, teams working out players, signing players that address the positions that maybe they didn't get to in the NFL draft. So Buffalo, rightfully so, adding a bunch of defense in the NFL draft. But Josh Allen, they're not forgetting about you. Elijah Moore signing on with the Bills. I'm sure that'll be just one of many roster moves here over the next few weeks as teams try to solidify their rosters as OTAs and mini camps really get cranked up. One other big item of news pertaining to the NFL draft. We didn't really get to it over the weekend because it was still playing out. We didn't have a resolution to it at the time. Over the course of the NFL draft, several NFL players were prank called during the course of the proceedings. People pretending to be teams, prank calling prospective NFL players. Really immature, gross thing to do. And one of them, at least, has been resolved because it pertained to the son of Atlanta Falcons defensive coordinator Jeff Ulbrich. His son, Jax, discovered confidential information, basically phone numbers, at some point before the draft. One of those being that of Shedeur Sanders. You've probably seen the viral videos of Sanders getting prank called while he was waiting to hear his name called eventually by the Cleveland Browns. Well, the punishment has been handed out. The Atlanta Falcons have been fined $250,000 for their role in this. And Ulbrich himself has been fined another $100,000. I think rightfully so, obviously, cannot allow that to happen. You're talking about proprietary information. Future employees, basically, all of these guys that teams have access to their information are going to become NFL employees. You've got to protect some sense of privacy, some sense of dignity. I'm sure it's going to be an uncomfortable time for Jax Ulbrich. Obviously, that the league cannot fine him as he is not a league employee, but fining his father $100,000. Ulbrich issued an apology on behalf of himself and on behalf of his son. Like I said, uncomfy times probably, but it seems like this situation anyway has been resolved. There were several other ones. Abdul Carter, the newly drafted Giants pass rusher, acknowledged that he had been prank called over the course of the draft as well. I believe I heard that Penn State tight end Tyler Warren, now an Indianapolis Colt, was also prank called. Not sure. Those do not relate to the Jax Ulbrich situation. Not sure if that is related to another leak or just bad luck on those guys' parts. I'm sure this story is not completely over, but worth noting from just kind of a gross episode from the weekend. Wanted to make sure we hit on that. More news to come. Again, OTAs fire up here at the beginning of May. I think teams are holding their rookie mini camps this coming weekend and the one after that. And shortly after that, toward the middle to end of May, you'll see all NFL teams get on the field together. All the good practice highlights. Like we always say, there's no off season in the NFL. So we will have plenty more coming your way in that regard. But the main purpose of today, Shedeur Sanders is a perfect segue because we're going to talk quarterback. And we're going to temporarily at least blow right past the coming season. I know all of these guys got drafted just a week ago. We don't care. We're going to look ahead to the coming draft cycle, try to identify the upcoming stars for next year's class. Particularly, the focus here is at quarterback because we've said it till we're blue in the face. This was not a fantastic quarterback class by NFL standards. Just 2 guys drafted in the first round. Pales in comparison to the year before when 6 were taken in the top 12. Going to try to get a read on what we can expect from the coming prospects. And there's nobody better to do that with than my friend Bucky Brooks, the man of a million jobs, one of the busiest guys I know in the industry. Very excited to chat with him about quarterback prospects. Check it out. Well, the best content is the stuff that the conversations that happen in real life that you just take to the air. And I was fortunate enough to be catching up with our own Bucky Brooks about all the goings on during draft weekend earlier this week. And we just kind of had the realization like, wait a second, let's just take this to the pod. So I'm excited to welcome in for the first time in a while, the one, the only Bucky Brooks to not only recap some storylines from this draft that just concluded, but who would we be if we didn't look ahead to the 2026 NFL draft? Bucky, how we doing, man?
We're good, Helman. What is going on? How are you doing post-draft coverage?
I'm doing great because my brain's already moving 1,000 miles an hour about stuff that's going to happen this summer. For instance, like this is not on the rundown, but you're the expert on all things Jags. Like, can you give me the breakdown of Travis's split snap? Like, where should I be looking for him the most? What are we hearing about Travis Hunter? As long as I've got you here,
I would say that Travis is going to play a lot of offense. I have been told that you can anticipate Brian Thomas Jr. on one side, De'Ami Brown on the other side, and Travis Hunter kind of floating various spots on offense. Then on defense, I think he might be a got to have it down situational player, but he is going to have the opportunity to play both ways. But I think early on, he can make his biggest mark on offense.
Jacksonville absolutely going to be one of the cities to have an eye on during training camp. I can't wait to check in with you about that. All right. So I wanted to hit on one thing in particular with you before we jump into looking at the 2026 draft, specifically the quarterbacks. And look, I at this point, I don't know how much we need to relitigate the Shedeur Sanders fall down the draft board. You wrote about it for us on foxsports.com during draft weekend, all of the variables that play into why that might have happened. My big question for you is, now that it has happened, what does it look like? Because it's easy for us to sit here and say, oh, well, teams didn't view him as a first-round prospect. Maybe teams didn't feel like dealing with everything that comes with the son of Deion Sanders. He's still, having fallen to pick 144, a much lower profile pick than anybody would have guessed. How do you think the Browns balance those two things between the star power and the intrigue of Shedeur Sanders versus the reality that he is a 5th round draft pick? How do you make those two things work here in his first summer in the NFL?
It's going to be really challenging. And I think it's going to be more challenging for Shedeur more so than the Browns. I think if Shedeur has self-awareness, he has to know that Dylan Gabriel was taken ahead of him. He also has to know that he is not coming in as the ballyhooed franchise savior. The best thing that he can do is go in and do the work, show everybody that he's worthy of not only being on the team, but being in the conversation to eventually start and allow his play to speak more than all of the other stuff. The challenge that you have when it comes to Shedeur is he's never had to necessarily do that. He's always been a starting quarterback. He's always played for his dad. Like, we knew those things coming in. But this is different because we didn't anticipate him coming into the league like this. We anticipated him getting ready to be a starter. When you're a fifth round pick and you have to make the team, man, you got to focus on the day to day and the slow climb up the depth chart. It is rare. Dak Prescott is the only one I can remember, fourth round pick. Before we get to training camp, he's the starter because he's right behind Tony Romo. Tony Romo gets hurt. He plays, but even then it was like, I mean, is he really going to start? He started the preseason game, looked good. Then it kind of kept on. Then you look up, Dak Prescott is the starter. This is one where Shedeur is fifth on the depth chart. I mean, Deshaun Watson doesn't count, but
he's technically there, though, and he's making a hell of a lot of money, even if he's not going to play football.
Yeah, so Deshaun Watson, who will end up on PUP, Joe Flacco, who last time he played in the Browns uniform was NFL Comeback Player of the Year. You have Kenny Pickett, who they traded for to bring over. You have Dylan Gabriel, who was in the same draft class but picked ahead of him. So normally he would get first bite of the apple of the rookies. And then Shedeur. Look, I can't remember the last time a third-round quarterback was cut his first year. So in essence, you can say Dylan Gabriel is there. Now this competition comes down to Kenny Pickett and Shedeur Sanders. Can Shedeur Sanders beat out Kenny Pickett in a league that Kenny Pickett has already taken a couple laps around the block in? That is the challenge that is ahead of Shedeur Sanders.
Okay, I have 2 points and questions that I want to get to. One of them is more like philosophical, and the other one's just very nuts and bolts. But let's start out with the big picture, which, where do you come down on this? You mentioned Dak Prescott. I think Brock Purdy is another guy worth mentioning, obviously. The thing with those guys, I mean, if you want to take it way, way back, obviously we can mention Tom Brady, but Tom Brady applies here too. The thing with those guys is that injury opens the door for them to get their shot. Like, as good as they wound up being, they didn't beat people out for the job right away. They got an opportunity because of injuries. Now, a million draft analysts will tell you that even if Shedeur Sanders wasn't a first-round prospect, he's a top 50, top 60 sort of talent. How do you reconcile that Shedeur maybe has more talent than his draft slot suggests with the fact that it is very, very rare for a guy drafted where he was to straight up win out a quarterback competition? It just doesn't seem like it's realistic to expect that to me.
It's not realistic for him to flat out win it. It would have to be something remarkable and unprecedented for him to do it. Because remember, same draft class, Dylan Gabriel was picked third. That means that they thought Dylan Gabriel was a more suitable player for what they wanted to do than Shedeur Sanders. That means he gets every opportunity first before Sanders. That also means that when we get to this part, remember, we only have three preseason games. We may have some joint practices. For Shedeur to do this season, he is going to have to be exceptional out the gate. I mean, just extraordinary where you're like, oh my God, like he is head and shoulders above everybody that we have in camp. The odds of him doing that are tough because Joe Flacco has a ridiculous arm. So you're going to see that. So for Shedeur to do it, he's going to have to outplay the competition in 9-on-7, 7-on-7 team drills as a team. Then maybe in a joint practice, he's going to have to dazzle. And then in the limited action that he gets in the fourth quarter, because remember, he is the last quarterback on the depth. So he is going in the fourth quarter when everyone's in the hitting the exit. That's when he's coming in and play. So in the fourth quarter of games, he's going to have to dazzle in game one to then maybe move up a little bit in game two to play against better competition. And then game three is, I mean, I don't know if it's a throwaway or not. It's a long shot for him to be able to get it done by the beginning of the year.
That you're speaking my language, because I think it's so interesting to think about the nuts and bolts of this. And you're a guy that's spent a lot of time around this league. It's hard to find reps for this many quarterbacks. I mean, typically the third string quarterback is lucky if he gets 2 or 3 meaningful opportunities per practice. And a lot of times if a team has 4 quarterbacks, the fourth guy's just happy to be there. He's, he's working off to the side. He's really not getting a shot other than the chance to be on the roster. Kevin Stefanski, you would think, has to find meaningful reps for 4 different guys in these practices and in these games. I think you're right. I would guess Shedeur Sanders is going to get thrown into the fourth quarter of all of these preseason games, but finding meaningful practice snaps for all of these guys, it seems very difficult to me. Like, do you give Joe Flacco the summer off because he's a veteran? How do you manage that?
I think the first thing, the way you manage it, is you have a conversation with Joe and you ask him, all right, how much work do you need to be ready for week 1? And when do we need to ramp that up? Is that, A, we have a real light schedule the first 2 weeks of training camp, and then the last week and a half, we kind of let you get into it? Like, how do we do that? But remember, he still has to develop the chemistry and the continuity with all his guys. So does that happen at OTAs? Does that happen in camp? Like, when does Joe get ready to play? So let's move Joe to the side and say, hey, Joe, we'll get you some work, but it'll be limited. We've seen you come off the couch and play and get it done. Maybe you can throw off to the side with the guys, either pre-practice, post-practice, to get the timing. Now it's a 3-man race with Pickett, Gabriel, and Sanders. All right, well, if you do it a 3-man thing, then what you do is a 3-man weave. Every day a different guy goes with the first group. However you divvy up the reps, and then you have a stopping point where you're always evaluating. The thing about it, I would say the guy who has to come out the gate smoking would be Kenny Pickett, right? Because depending upon how they did this in the conversation that they had internally, Kenny Pickett could be the one holding it back. And that's just being optimistic on Sanders. It may not be like that. It may have been Jimmy Haslam saying, hey, y'all need to take Sanders. But the coach is like, hey, we were already good with our 3. Because you have to think that when they drafted Dylan Gabriel, they were good.
Right.
Like, we're ready to go. This is how we go.
It kind of felt like they were trying to get out ahead of that when they drafted Dylan Gabriel. Like, hey, look, we took our quarterback. We don't have to worry about this.
We're good. And now Sanders is there. So that kind of changes the equation. So if he's the last one in, like, they could technically treat him like, not the camp arm, but kind of treat him like that until he shows otherwise, until it's really obvious that he's better than the other guys that he's competing with, either Gabriel or Pickett. So there's a lot of pressure on, I would say, Sanders, because the optimistic side, the TV side would be like, oh, now Kenny Pickett, like, they'll move him. But when you look at the plan was never to add Sanders based on them drafting Dylan Gabriel. So this is unique. He is going to have to convince them that they made a mistake when they bypassed him in the 3rd round to take Dylan Gabriel.
It's going to be very interesting seeing how Shedeur Sanders adapts to having next to no job security, really, when you think about it. I'll be fascinated to see how the Cleveland Browns juggle all of that. All right, the main purpose of what I wanted to get you on here for, because why wouldn't we talk about something that has the potential to age incredibly poorly, since Cam Ward was just taken number 1 overall and Shedeur Sanders fell to number 144 overall. But you're working on something for us at foxsports.com, previewing the top of the 2026 quarterback class. So if you're a fan of a team, if you have a feeling that your guys might need a quarterback next April, we got you covered. And Bucky, I mean, I feel like it has to start with the NFL royalty, right? Arch Manning getting set to start his first season at Texas. It's amazing. And look, I understand it. The bloodlines are undeniable. The guy is incredibly talented, but it is wild to project him as a potential number 1 overall pick, having started just 2 games in college. But between the talent and the pedigree, I think I understand it. Or is that where you fall on this?
I think it's crazy that we're already talking about Arch Manning being the number 1 overall pick in the draft. He literally has played 2 games.
Welcome to the content cycle, man.
I mean, like, literally 2 games. And I feel like selfishly, from the clickbait side of what we do as content creators, we have been able to ride the legacies of 2 famous Hall of Famers. So we have squeezed all the juice out of the Deion Sanders, Shedeur Sanders orange. And as soon as we move right to Arch Manning. we just get the orange and we discard it, put it in the wastebasket, and now we are looking at a 2-year run of the Arch Manning, Peyton Manning, Eli Manning thing, where we're saying Arch Manning has to be number 1. So we're going to talk about Arch Manning the entire time, even though literally 2 starts. I mean, it is crazy that we're talking about that. Now, I will say this from a pedigree standpoint, we in the business, we always talk about bloodlines, and it's the family business. And Eli and Peyton and Archie, we're talking about three, like two generations, but three quarterbacks in the family that are all famous Super Bowl winners. It's in the blood. So now here comes Arch. Arch is a better athlete. Arch has more talent. Arch just doesn't have the experience. And the two games that you watch, I think it was Louisiana Monroe and Mississippi State. Mississippi State was a little slower. Louisiana Monroe is like, man, it's like going to the fairs. He's on the Ferris wheel just throwing bombs, and Isaiah Baum and Matthew Golden and some freshman 5-star recruiter. They're just lighting up everybody in these early games. And so you can see the talent, you can see the athleticism, you can see him run and get on the perimeter. There's a lot to like about him. But it's a projection. Right now, he's just a flasher. He's flashed talent, but now we need to see him over the course of the season. But I can understand why people are a little bit excited about him.
Do you know who Arch Manning opens his season against in his first year as Texas's starter?
Who do we open up?
At Ohio State. At the reigning national champs at the Horseshoe on the first Saturday of college football season. So it's going to be, we're not going to have to wait a month to watch him play a bunch of Renowins to figure out what he's all about, if I had to guess.
Oh, you think there'll be a lot of scouts in attendance in that one? Maybe
just a few.
You think the credential list would be a little loaded when it comes to like, hey, can I get a credential to that game to see Arch and whoever is playing quarterback for the Ohio State Buckeyes?
My favorite part is that whichever GMs decide to go, we can turn that into content and be like, oh, look, he already thinks he needs a quarterback.
I mean, it's the gift that keeps on giving. It is the legacy that we have. And what's so great about it is anyone who knows the Mannings and knows that like both Peyton and Eli kind of stayed around to get enough experience. We got like 24 months of like content coming. We got 24 months of like Arch Manning content because we're going to do this full circle arc. We're going to get to January and be like, you know what? He's coming back. And then that'll give us a chance to talk about the 27 draft with Arch already pegged to be the number one in that draft.
I do think that's worth mentioning. Peyton and Eli stayed in school for the whole duration. Arch Manning obviously doesn't need the money between the money he's making himself with NIL and the fact that he's a Manning. I really think you should at least earmark the possibility that he's not even available in the 2026 draft cycle. I wouldn't be surprised.
Not even available. And I'll say this, one, for a guy who is coming from Manning money, who has a blockbuster NIL deal, who is going to the University of Texas and all that entails, as someone who has a daughter that's going there in the fall, I can't imagine there being a rush to get out of 40 acres when I already have it. I just can't see the need to like, oh, I need to leave 6th Street and all the things that may take place after hours. I just can't understand why he might be in a rush to either thing. They literally have the opportunity to look and see who could be the number one team and say, you know what? I don't want to go there. Go back to school.
Take it from me. Austin is a pretty fun place to spend some time. So yeah, I wouldn't blame him at all. I'm intrigued to see how it's going to pan out. It's not fair to him to peg all this stuff on him. I mean, you
who
make a good
cares
point.
about fair? We're like, don't play the mature, hey, we should wait.
We already mentioned him.
Yeah, like
no, but what I was gonna say, Buck, is like the talent is so obvious. Like you said, he's a better athlete. He's a better athlete than his uncles. I am not saying he's gonna be a better quarterback. That never came out of my mouth. But he is a better athlete. So when you combine that level of athleticism, the talent that's going to be around him at Texas, it's going to be must-see TV to see how he develops, which to hear it from you, it sounds like you're going to see it up close. I mean, you got to go visit your daughter, right? You get yourself a seat.
Unfortunately, I don't know if that's good or bad that I got to go with my daughter's gym. It's the first time that I've ever thought about like, hey, we can't be in the same watering holes. Like, I'm used to going to like nobody wants to see dad in the watering hole when he's just doing what dads do like in Austin. Like no one wants to see that. But it is an opportunity to like kill two birds with one stone. But when we talk about Arch, in all seriousness about his talent, like he has a stronger arm. He's more athletic. I would even say this, just watching the little snippets, he has more swag than both of his uncles. Like he's a different dude when it comes to the connectivity that you see with his teammates and all this other stuff. Like he's about that life. And that is different. And that is something that when we're talking about franchise quarterbacks, particularly coming on the heels of everything that this draft was, when it talks to the intangible qualities and all that stuff. And I just think, not that they're the same, but I just think about the connectivity that Jackson Dart had with his teammates at Ole Miss and the way that that was very appealing to the New York Giants. There is something to Arch, the talent, the connectivity, the tools that kind of makes it hard to think that someone is ever going to surpass him as the number one quarterback prospect in whatever class that he elects to be in.
He's like a Manning that can properly do a TikTok dance,
Yeah.
which like that sounds flippant. It's really not. I mean, you make a great point about Jackson Dart. I think it makes me think of Baker Mayfield a little bit, not in terms of his play style, but his personality. Intriguing to see. All right, let's move on to a guy that we know will be available in 2026 because he already elected to come back for his senior season. That would be Drew Allar of Penn State. You last saw him in the semifinals of the college football playoff. He took them almost to the championship game. They lost to Notre Dame. He announced he's coming back. Buck, this one intrigues me too, because 6'3", 238. I mean, that's his Penn State listing, which is usually a little bit of a lie. But even if he's a little bit less than that, you're talking about the prototypical quarterback build. And he improved significantly in 2024 from 2023. So if he can just do that again, I understand the hype completely.
Well, so you have to understand, like scouting can go one or two ways, right? It can go off of potential or it can go off production. When you look at the potential, the first thing that's going to appeal for so many scouts about Drew Allar is going to be the tools. I mean, you talk about 6'3", the size, the frame, the arm talent, has some mobility at that size. Look, he's going to play in an offense that should kind of dazzle a little bit with some of the returners that he has playing alongside of him. And if he just makes the jump that he made last season, where he went from being like, okay, to, he has some talent. He has some, to now, if he shows that he has command of the offense and does it with a little flair, people are going to be all over him because this class didn't have the prototypical guys that you see, like in terms of height, weight, arm talent, all that other stuff. He is kind of like the poster child for what you want your quarterback to look like. Now it's about him putting the performance to match the projections. If he does that, then we're talking about a guy that certainly is contention to be QB1.
I was refamiliarizing myself with all of these guys before we recorded, and I did notice, and I went back and looked. I mean, 3 of his interceptions last season came in the postseason. He threw 8 on the year. 3 of those happened, 2 against Oregon, and then 1 in that semifinal loss to Notre Dame. Fair to say that decision-making is part of what you want to see improve there, because especially against Notre Dame, a yucky ball in the fourth quarter of that game that helped Notre Dame get past Penn State. I think that's what you want to see from a guy coming back for another season. Is obviously you want the production, but you want to see the growth in terms of decision making, making the right reads, all of that type of stuff.
With the decision making, you just want to see him be better, taking care of the ball, better clutch performance. And then if they have these big moment games where they play on the big stage, how does he handle it? How does he handle the moment? Because the Notre Dame game, people are going to be like, well, can he handle big game pressure? Can he handle when all of it is on him? Is he what we call a truck or is he a trailer? Can he carry the team or does he need the team to kind of carry him? That's what we're trying to figure out when it comes to Drew Allar. What category does he fall in when it comes to being a quarterback?
I feel like there's a lot of similarities between him and the last guy we wanted to highlight. And I mean, not ironic, not in terms of like build at all. They don't look remotely the same. Garrett Nussmeier, 6'2", right around 200 pounds. I wouldn't be surprised if he weighs a little bit less than that. Like, much
Is
like
that
Jaden.
is that with
Wait,
all his equipment on? Is that with everything? Are we
yeah,
saying 200
exactly.
pounds, helmet,
Exactly.
shoulder pads, cleats, all of it?
Much like the LSU quarterback that came before him. I mean, we worried so much about Jaden Daniels' durability, except Garrett Nussmeier, not the same caliber of athlete as Jaden Daniels. I think with Jaden, there's the element of, well, you can't hit me if you can't catch me. Garrett Nussmeier is going to take some hits. He held up well in his first season as the starter at LSU. I think that's a concern for him. And then, similar to what I just said about Drew Allar, you watch Garrett Nussmeier, there's definitely some hero ball to his game where you probably got to coach some aggression out of him. I mean, I know you don't want quarterbacks to change their stripes completely, but Garrett Nussmeier hasn't seen a throw he doesn't think he can make, and that feels like a lesson you need to learn is not true when you get to the NFL.
Yeah, but I think he's also been surrounded by playmakers. And when you're surrounded by playmakers, you have a tendency to trust those guys to go make plays. The big thing is if he can get some of that Jaden Daniels sauce that was going on down in Baton Rouge, where he had a major jump before that final campaign, that's what you want to see. There's always someone that takes an unexpected jump in the quarterback class. Cam Ward came out of nowhere. Joe Burrow, way back, surprised us going from kind of being meh to, oh my God, look at how great he is. Jaden Daniels is a similar thing. Maybe it's just something down there about LSU, like y'all just kind of figured out.
I've been trying to tell you that, man. We're 2 for 2.
Yeah, but if he makes that jump, yeah, he's gonna be in the conversation because he certainly understands it from an IQ standpoint. He has a feel for the game. He has command of the offense. It literally is just a matter of the size, frame. Can he hold up? And then can he make the plays without putting the offense in harm's way?
We talk so much about Arch Manning's pedigree, and for good reason. How valuable do you think it is that Garrett's father, Doug, is a longtime football coach? He's currently the OC of the New Orleans Saints. He's been a quarterback coach forever. And I feel like when you watch Garrett Nussmeier, his mechanics, his footwork, like all of that stuff feels so on point. And I can't think that's a coincidence. And it seems like a pretty big leg up for a developmental quarterback.
Prior to the Shedeur thing, we always loved legacy and pedigree and those things. And legacy comes in two forms. One is a player has a son that's a player. And then the other part of it is, man, son of a coach. If a kid is the son of a coach, man, they go to the front of the line because you anticipate that they're going to have all the intangibles, all the intelligence, all of the knowledge and awareness of situations, circumstances related to ball. He has that. And when you talk about having a dad who's an NFL offensive coordinator who can prepare you for all of these things that you're going to see on the horizon, I think it does put bonus points at the end of his score. And, the tools and those things, like they'll speak for themselves, but that IQ, that intangible stuff, that could be a separator for him compared to some of the others in the class.
I'm ready for college football already, man. And just thinking, Texas against Ohio State to open the season, you could have, all right, forget 2026. You could have the two best prospects in the next draft. Just have Jeremiah Smith and Arch Manning do everything in that game. And then we can create content about 2 draft classes from now. How's that sound?
I mean, like just already talking about Jeremiah Smith and how good he would be. And then we begin to say, like, hey, what would he be in this year's class? If we go back and look with T-Mac and all these guys, where would he rank? The best player in college football would be the best player in the draft. And he's only all of the content that we're going to need off of these guys.
Real quick before you go, I mean, you touched on that, and I do think it's interesting. You're working on something else for us at Fox Sports, just ranking the recent classes of quarterback. And it's not surprising. I mean, we've been saying it all through this draft cycle. Shedeur and Cam Ward not topping out that list. How does next year, or how does the coming crop compare to recent years? And have the last couple years, how do those guys stack up, especially now that a few of them have been in the league? Like, what's your ranking there?
Well, the coming crop will be in the conversation and in consideration, right? So when you talk about the top of the board, like Arch Manning is going to be in that conversation. In terms of the class as a whole, yeah, like it could be that because we didn't even mention Lenore Sellers, who could be the best of them all when it comes to it, the South Carolina kid. Like he's a guy who has the big time arm talent, has the playmaking ability, some running skills, and all that. It'd be interesting. But what I'm doing on foxsports.com, I am going to talk about the last few drafts and all the quarterbacks that came out. So it gives me an opportunity to talk about Caleb and them going all the way to what we anticipate the next class, which could feature Arch Manning. And so we're going to break them down from 5 to 1. I'm going to put Arch Manning at number 5 just because of the great unknown. He might have the best tools of them all when it comes to combination of arm talent, running ability, athleticism, knowledge, IQ, and those things. We just have to put an asterisk by him because he hasn't played. 2 starts, we've seen it, but this year he look 9 touchdowns, 2 interceptions in limited action. If he has a great year, we'll end up revisiting this list and put him ahead of the next guy, who will be Michael Penix. You know what's funny about Michael Penix is when you watch Michael Penix, if Michael Penix had played in the playoff and they lost to Texas, his draft stock might have been even higher than it ended up being when he was the 8th overall pick. Because that game against Texas, I don't know if I've ever seen a flamethrower like that. Like he was on level 10 in terms of the way that he attacked the Longhorns, the dimes that he dropped, left-handed gunslinger, arm talent galore. Like he was the rifleman. And when you talk to the people in Atlanta, they talk about like he's even better than we anticipated the way that he looked coming out of Washington and those things. But I just remember how good he was as a left-handed flamethrower. He continued to dazzle. And so I would have him just ahead of Arch Manning. At 3, Drake May. And look, this is close because Drake May and Michael Penix, to me, were closer, but Drake May is a better athlete. I would say that he had a great sophomore season. Junior year wasn't as good, but talented, tools. He has dual playmaking ability, high IQ, fell off a little bit his final season, but when you watched him as a first-time starter the season before, I mean, he was terrific. I mean, he had numbers that rival some of the best in college. I think his numbers were up there with Deshaun Watson and all those guys, and you just raved about what he could be at the next level. Hasn't realized his potential, didn't even really realize his potential as a collegiate player, but the tools just kind of put him up there where you had him put him 3rd. Now, this is interesting because in my grading thing, Jaden Daniels and Caleb Williams, that would be the debate. And in fact, I gave them the same grade, the same exact score or whatever. And I think at one point I had Jaden Daniels over Caleb Williams, and I think it may have ended like that. But for this exercise, I'm going to say same score, but I'll just put Jaden Daniels there at number 2 because he was drafted number 2. And what I would say about him, I felt like he was the best dual threat prospect that we've ever seen in a draft class. And the reason why I feel like he was the best dual threat that we've ever seen in a draft class is because watching Lamar Jackson at Louisville, Lamar Jackson was terrific. Lamar Jackson was more of a runner than a thrower. Jaden Daniels was the rare athlete that was terrific running around in space and making plays, but also was a polished passer. That set him apart from so many others. And even though it was like that final season that really stood out, you saw flashes of it at Arizona State and even a little bit his first year at LSU. But that last season, he was a dart thrower, and he continued to be a dart thrower as he was the offensive rookie of the year. And then Caleb Williams will be at the top of the list. And the thing about Caleb Williams that I'll say now, and I still have a question on is, look, he was an improvisational wizard. He played off script and off schedule. He made these Pat Mahomes-like throws where he's rolling one way, throwing all the way back. And the Heisman Trophy season, like he was on a different level in terms of running around and doing all that other stuff. Like his final season, like he wasn't the same in terms of like being able to get the wins, maybe trying to do too much, but the talent is certainly there. The thing that I wonder about, and some of that showed up his last season, like his personality is a little different. He's a little eccentric. I would say he's not really your stereotypical franchise quarterback in terms of his demeanor and maybe in some of his behaviors, but the talent sometimes can allow you to ignore some of those things because he's so good. You just say, hey, he's a little different bird, but he's whatever. I do wonder how that plays out when we go back and look at his pro career. If his pro career is surpassed by guys that might have been drafted lower than him, just because the connectivity wasn't the same as like the connectivity that Jaden Daniels appears to have with his pro teammates.
I've been thinking about Caleb throughout the last week because of the Shedeur Sanders situation. Just because the whole time I'm like, the right degree of talent will get a team on board with anything, because we heard all of these concerns leading up to last year's draft, and Caleb Williams, still rightly so in my opinion, still went number 1 overall. So I mean, I think talent is the great equalizer. I do think Shedeur Sanders fell for reasons beyond his talent, but if the talent level had been where Caleb's was, I don't think any of this is even a conversation.
And I think that's a big part of it. I like to say the greater the talent, the greater the tolerance. So
Absolutely.
the more talented you are, the more you're put up with or whatever. And for Shedeur, look, he may have overrated his talent. And then he found out, a lot of people don't tolerate it if you're not like an A+ talent.
It's going to be interesting. I really think this upcoming quarterback class is going to be good. I don't know for sure who's going to hit, who's going to develop. I think it's going to be really good. Having said that, I'm really starting to feel like it's going to be a little while before we see a quarterback class as crazy as 2024, where you have 6 guys that go that high, and most of them look like they're going to be quality NFL starters already. I think that's going to be incredibly rare. But this was a lot of fun, man. I'm glad I got a chance to catch up with you. Make sure you go check out his work at foxsports.com and the Fox Sports app, and we'll catch up with you soon, man.
Should be fun, man. Thanks so much for having me on.
Thanks again to Bucky Brooks for hopping on, and thanks to y'all for tuning in. We will be back on the other side of the weekend with more shows for y'all. Make sure you subscribe. Go find us on Spotify, on Apple Podcasts. You can find us on YouTube, wherever you prefer to get your NFL pods, your NFL news. You can find us there. As always, I appreciate y'all so much, and I will talk to you next time.